we both watched a film, or
Yeah,
not on Netflix.
correct. Yes.
Wait, is it? No, Peacock.
Right. Both of these were Peacock films. Peacock did good for us this week. Well, let's not. Maybe I shouldn't use the word good because one of these I had a great time with, and the other was a slog through the mud in a winter day.
Oh, okay, so you did end up watching Saturday Night.
Oh, I did. In fact, you can read my full thoughts about Saturday Night and the experience I had with it on mediaboatpodcast.com. However, before you do that, I recommend you read Mike's thoughts about The Wild Robot, which is the other film that we watched this week. His thoughts are a lot more glowing than mine.
Really?
Yes.
Did you not like The Wild Robot?
No, I loved The Wild Robot.
Oh,
I'm just saying that the two thoughts documents, the
the
two
two thoughts
stories presented on the
documents.
website, are night and day in
Oh,
how
okay, I
they
thought you were
critically
saying that like
evaluate the
you're
film.
what you would have written for The Wild Robot would have been
No.
gloomy weather.
No. And yeah, let's talk about that first because yeah, I really did really like the Wild Robot.
Oh, good thing we saved it then, because I really wanted
Yes.
you to watch it.
Yes. Yeah, DreamWorks continues their upward rise. This is the second time in a row after I finished a DreamWorks film, the last one that I watched being Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, that I said this is the best thing the studio's ever done. They just keep topping themselves. And yeah, this is now the best thing the studio's ever done. Yeah, I was floored with the look of this thing. It just is animated incredibly. It's got a really tender, emotional core to it. It's just the whole film just is just like brimming with such like relatability and such emotionality and something and stuff that is not just for kids and a lot of universal emotional themes. Almost too many themes
Hmm.
when you kind of break it down. Like there's nature and nurture happening. There's also like found family. There's also like technology and whether it's gone too far. And there's all sorts of things. There's parenthood, like the idea of are like what are your responsibilities if you have a child or if you adopt a child or if you choose not to have children. Like there's a lot going on in what's ostensibly a kids movie. It's pretty in depth, but it all manages to never feel overwhelming. It's delivered in a way that is subtle enough and respects the audience enough that it doesn't whack you over the head with it, which is something that even Disney and Pixar have become very guilty of. So the fact that they're outdoing Pixar at a very Pixar thing has really shown you how far the studio has come.
Chris Sanders, writer, director of this, is the guy who did the first How to Train Your Dragon before that got split off to its own IP franchise, and that had
Mm-hmm.
a lot of familiar themes that you can see here in The Wild Robot. I think he's got some family issues that he works through in animation.
Yeah, you could even go even further back and talk about the work that he did with Disney with Lilo and
Lilo
Stitch.
Stitch. Yep.
This film
Also, a
actually,
very found family film.
yes, I was going to say this film has an awful lot in common with Lilo and Stitch, not just the themes of family, but also the juxtaposition of nature and sci-fi.
Hmm.
There was a lot of scenes in this film that reminded me explicitly of Lilo and Stitch, especially the division of the acts of the halves of the movie, right? Where you had the first half being very natural and very much about this this found like the found family is part of it, but it's about this like organic kind of feel, this more analog kind of idea, like these ideas of how like we get along as a society. And then the second half of the film, especially Act Three in Wild Robot, where it really leans into the opposite of that, which is like, oh, here's this cold robot world where these people don't understand any of this. And having those two things in conflict is something he does appear to like returning to. It did feel like a kind of a homecoming for Chris Sanders in a lot of ways because he's gone full circle now thematically with his films. Of course, this is based on a children's book series. A lot of this was in the books already. Christy is a children's librarian. She was able to tell me the differences between the book. This is pretty faithful, she said, but there are a couple of elements from the second book that are used kind of at the ending to give it a more satisfying end in the book. Um, I'm not going to spoil what that is because that would be a
Right.
spoiler for the film if I told
Yeah.
you.
I did look up that
Um,
there's 3 books in the Wild Robot right now.
yes, yes. But yeah, so yeah, I think in a lot of ways, the book already kind of tackled all of this. So a lot of this work is being done by the series on which it's based. But that's not to say that Sanders didn't put his touch on it. You can definitely see a lot of similarities, especially with the kind of humor that he likes. He likes very like surprising, almost kind of borderline shocking kind of humor sprinkled in every once in a while, especially about death
Yes.
and danger. Like he's not afraid to put young characters in danger, and he does it again here. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot to like. What I will say, the one negative I found is that I feel like Act One is way too fast, way too crowded. I wanted to enjoy the scenery that I was seeing, but the editing was so quick and the action was so constant that I felt like I needed a little breathing room. That was 100% alleviated as soon as Act Two started, though. And the rest of the film does not have that problem. But that first act, I just felt whiplash because I was like, whoa, there's way too much happening. And I get thematically why you'd want that. Plot wise, it makes sense because you're supposed to believe how dangerous this environment is. It needs to set up the stakes very quickly. And it does. It does that by having a lot of rapid fire action sequences.
Mhm.
I just kind of wish that maybe instead of maybe the hour 45, I think it clocks in at, if maybe we got that full 2 hours, then maybe we would have had that breathing room in Act One.
Right. But because of animation, they usually want to hit that 90 minutes.
Yeah. Except for Pixar, who no rules apply to them.
Yes. That's
But
okay
yeah.
because if you try bringing rules to Pixar, they'll hit you over the head with one of their Oscars.
But
All right.
yeah, is there
Speaking
anything else
of,
you want to say about it?
no, like I said, if you could read my thoughts of it on MedievalPodcast.com. But speaking of 90 minutes, that's the runtime and cinema runtime for Saturday night.
uh, but it feels so much longer.
It feels like they pack so much into what's supposed to be a continuous running clock. However, the way that it's done feels like if this was shot Birdman style in a one
Yeah.
continuous take, I think you would have had a better experience watching this rather than just in a standard movie format. Because it's supposed to be the first 90 minutes leading up to the premiere of Saturday Night Live, uh, where Lorne Michaels just is trying to run around and trying to like get everything like set up and finalized before the cameras go live. If they go live, will that even happen? Will they
Yeah.
make it to air because it's Saturday night live, not Saturday night pre-taped? So it's a fast moving uh take on a very fictionalized heavy 90 minutes that I feel like they squeeze a lot into it in a very overarching kind of general feel of like what it felt like just in general of putting together Saturday Night Live for the first show and not like the actual 90 minutes of the chaos that goes into it. It feels more of a brief generalization and a brief summary with I think it's based off like one of Lorne Michaels' books and takes on it
Mhm.
than like a more faithful recreation of what it probably could have and should have been. Because
Yeah.
I was like excited that this was happening, like they were making this, especially with the 50th anniversary of SNL, and like, hey, like I'm looking forward to this. This seems like a really good movie. But after having seen it, I'm kind of glad I waited to see it at home instead of in theater because I think that had I gone and seen it there, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that was good, but I'm not really like rushing out to see it again. Not really rushing out to tell people about it. It's more of kind
Yeah.
of like a fun like weekend nod. But if you're not at all like interested in any of the backstory to SNL, you're not gonna have a good time with this.
Yeah. Yeah, all that is true. I had the same problems with it. I think it's too jam-packed. They're trying to tackle way too much. It's too ambitious of a project. It's like, and this is the this is an element of the bigger, wider problem that I have with the film, which I go into in my thoughts post. Which is the tone of this thing. Like the very fact that they tried so much is directly related to why they did it. And why they did it is because for whatever reason, Jason Reitman thinks that like Saturday Night Live, or at least its first season, or possibly just its first episode, who knows, is extremely important, capital I, and he wants to treat it like it is. This is a problem to me because ostensibly, if you are making a movie about a comedy, it should be at least a little funny.
Mm-hmm.
This movie is not funny at all. Even when there are jokes happening, they are just the jokes that aired on the show. They're not, there's no extra jokes here. And when there's attempts at something that might be a funny thing, it just feels so, it feels the whole weight of importance on it and legacy on it. And also it's shot like it's like, I mentioned in the thoughts in the post that it feels like it's shot like a Scorsese movie. Like it feels like it's not shot like something that should be funny. It's shot that something that should be very, very serious and very like, oh, so reverent. Like it just feels so off to me. The entire time I was like, what are, why did we choose to make it like this? You don't have to make it in 16 millimeters so it looks like the 70s. No one told you it had to be that way. And again, like they they try some of the like follow the camera shots, but you're right, they don't commit all the way to it. And so why did they try it in the first place? Again, they think they're Scorsese. It's like Reitman wants the opening shot of Goodfellas in a movie about Saturday Night Live. It's like why are we doing that way?
Right, especially with the opening where it goes from Lord Michael standing outside, going to the elevator, talking about it, and then like coming out of it and continuing like, okay, like yeah, if this is how it's going to be, I'm all for it. Like I want this to continue like this. Like that gives it more of a sense of like dramatic effect to it. That yes, you are racing against the clock because it is a nonstop like race to get to live. But then as soon as you hit those first cuts, as soon as you go like the back and forth to it, then it takes me out of it. It breaks it up.
Yeah.
The editing essentially becomes just another dramatic movie and not,
Yeah.
and that it loses that tension because you're no
Yes.
longer in this one take
It feels
or one shot.
soulless.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels soulless. It feels like they took all of the things that people actually like about Saturday Night Live and threw them out the window because they wanted to say some sort of important thing about comedy and culture. But the thing is in order to do that, you also have to be saying something about comedy and culture, and it really doesn't. It just regurgitates the same stuff that we've heard forever about the debut of Saturday Night Live. That it was, oh, it was bringing the underground comedy scene to television, and that was this underdog program that NBC didn't believe in. It was just the dispute thing with Johnny Carson. It was like all the stuff that we already know, especially people like me who have read Live from New York twice.
Mhm.
Like it's stuff that we all know, and it doesn't do anything new with it. It doesn't do anything interesting with the material. It just tries to convince you that it's important. It is the most like, it's funny that you mentioned Birdman because since Birdman, this is the first movie I've seen in a long time that feels like it thinks it's more important than it is. Birdman won Best Picture, but this
Yes.
didn't have a flying chance in hell at any Oscars, and I'm glad it didn't get nominated any because I don't want Jason Reitman thinking that he did that good of a job.
Yes.
Anyway, so yeah,
Well,
you can
you
read
can
more
listen
of
to
what
your
my thoughts
you
are.
can listen to your full thoughts on the
Yeah.
mutabilipodcast.com website.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm glad we're in lockstep there with both the Wild Robot and Saturday Night, and
Yep.
we can close this one out then.